IDW Sonic, issue 53. Eggman wonders who's there and thinks it's Sonic, but if it was Sonic, why would he wait before revealing himself to him? Surge says she's better than Sonic and says she's taking Eggman's stuff while her hands are full of electricity. But very conveniently, Surge doesn't just immediately electrocute him to death, or at least proceed to beat him up a lot with her fists if she wants a longer amount of time to enjoy getting back at him. Instead, she stands there letting him say boring stuff. He wisely tells his robots that he wants his device back from her in one piece. Go figure, she ends up being fine. I guess she dodged the shots. It's weird that she says groovy. Eggman asks her what she did to his dynamo cage because that's not how it's supposed to work. Huh? What, is she a brilliant engineer who can modify it to her whim now? Or did she just press the right buttons on it in the right order? In which case he should have known it could work like that because he made it. Why would he be upset about how she modified it just because it was modified when it's still useful? This is such a confusing scene. This could have easily not happened. Couldn't she have intimidated Cubot into telling her exactly the right way to use the device? She destroys his robots, and for absolutely no reason. Because Sonic's at the top of her hit list, she leaves instead of killing Eggman right there. So she's a giant hypocrite for yelling at Sonic for not killing him just to make the same mistake with no good excuse. In fact, she was just about to kill Starline earlier before Kit made another suggestion for her. She didn't make the excuse that she wouldn't do that because Sonic's at the top of her hit list. So just like I thought, the writer wrote herself into a corner, and the only reason Eggman survived was meta logic. That he's the most iconic villain in Sonic. Isn't it obvious that the audience would want a bunch of cartoon slapstick against him? I can understand not permanently getting rid of him, but the writer could have had him appear to be electrocuted to death, just for it to be revealed that his data goes to an identical robot whenever he dies. So he'd be a badass who really takes advantage of being a genius, and could get in dangerous situations and still have it believable that he'd survive. That would have made me impressed with the writer, instead of the writing becoming contrived. It wouldn't seem as contrived if Surge said that she's keeping Eggman alive because he causes Sonic trouble. But even then, if Sonic had fun fighting her, that should have given away that he just finds it fun to deal with Eggman and his troublemaking. As long as it's not the Metal Virus. So she should figure out that killing Eggman would only make Sonic's life boring, and Eggman could kill Sonic before her any day now, for all she knows. So it'd be smarter for her to get rid of him. But nope, she somehow won't even land a single blow on one of the people responsible for it being made. Which she said because Starline got inspired by Eggman in the first place. She could say that she's not killing him because she wants him to live long enough to find out that she killed Sonic before he got the chance to. But she doesn't have enough against him personally compared to what she has against Sonic and Starline that she would want to keep Eggman alive just out of spite. Surge says that rocked. No, it didn't. Sure, it was cool that she threatened Eggman and stole stuff like a badass, but it would have been really badass and satisfying for her if she at least beat him up. Which Charmy got away with doing to him in Sonic Heroes. So that's not too violent for the series to show. I don't even know why that was just in silhouette. AOSDH had slapstick against Eggman all the time. Starline shows up, and out of nowhere he's acting exactly like he used to with Sonic instead of still being insecure and miserable from having just lost to Eggman, where he was acting like he was having a breakdown. It'd make no sense if he showed up again in the flesh exactly the same way as he did before. He didn't come off like he'd instantly bounce back after that episode. He took a big fall last time without an awesome healing ability. He begged for his life in front of her, so he's not able to heal really fast. She even says he's gone, even though she didn't witness him falling to his death, and Eggman and Belle never told her what happened to him. Why would she just assume he got killed because the city started collapsing after she fell away from it, and Eggman's still alive and Starline's not there? She would assume that Starline went back to his base. Is he just messing with her when he says that him being gone would be more of a problem if he was real? He says that little number has got her running on overdrive, including her brain, and he says he might be her hallucination because of the device. Since when do hallucinations tell you they're hallucinations? Well, I wouldn't know. He says she's better off without the device, but must be being sarcastic because he then goes on to say that she'd be weak and alone without it. He's not really talking like Starline, he's talking like how she'd imagine him to if he was being her enemy, but it wouldn't be honest of him to think she'd be weak. His taunts have to be reflecting her insecurities, but she never came off as insecure and having any kind of insecurities and has no reason to think she's weak. She uses her electricity magic and it seems to be gone after that. Why would the device give her hallucinations? Why did she even do anything to alter it in the first place? I assume this is going to happen a lot more often. It'd be pretty confusing if she went an entire issue with this thing on her head without him ever showing up again. The next day, Sonic's leg gets bandaged, and he tells Tails he feels great and he did nice work, calling him a doctor. I also like that the artist was at least creative enough to make the bandage different color than white. And Kit cutely asks him if he'd like more ice or bandages, being afraid of him. Sonic politely turns him down and says he's okay and can relax, and Kit apologizes. It makes sense that someone as on edge as Kit would still be expecting Sonic to fly off the handle with him easily because the Associate wants to kill Sonic, and he's used to Surge instead, and has amnesia, so he might not even remember what Sonic's known for being like. I assume Starline used to tell him that he and Tails weren't as good as they seemed. I always imagined that we'd see what happened right after Tails reunited with Kent, even if it'd just be a few panels. I figured that since Sonic's leg was hurt, they'd call up Amy with a phone from one of their shoots and tell her to drive to them and give them a ride home, because it'd be faster than Tails flying with Sonic and carrying him until he'd run out of energy. Well, Kit wouldn't run out of energy, so he could carry him while flying. Either way, Kit would have been told by them what happened in the city, which would make it clear that they saved his life. Sonic's pretty sympathetic here in how he treats Kit, but still, it's hard to believe he wouldn't get annoyed with him eventually. I like that he says before telling him to put the first aid stuff away, struggling to think of something for him to do. Belle says there was a lot of damage to their pet Motobug, and she's not sure how to repair it. Why would it only be left to her? Tails is a genius engineer too, with way more experience with badniks. Not to mention the idea of her being unsure of how to repair something is ridiculous. Tails asks Sonic what they're gonna do with Kent. They seriously hadn't thought about that in their entire time walking home? I always assumed that they would have thought of that by now. It's obvious what they have to do with him. He was kidnapped by Starline, so he would have been reported missing. So Sonic has to take his picture and go to the police station to report a missing person. Couldn't he Google missing people in his area? Wouldn't he find a picture of Kit at that point? Wouldn't there be a number he could call then? Obviously the first step would be to try to reunite him with his family, which wouldn't take very long. Tails is supposed to be a genius, but besides having a talent for engineering and hacking, he's shown almost no indication of actually being smart in IDW, and this isn't helping. He has good ideas and judgment, but that doesn't matter if he goes along with Sonic's terrible judgment. Sonic's not smart in the slightest. Why is he even considering telling Kit the truth right away, when Sonic's the same guy who decided not to tell him he saw Surge fall at first because he knew he'd freak out? But now he thinks he should tell him right away because he deserves to know. Why on earth would he decide to tell him they died when he doesn't know for sure that they did yet? It is sweet of him to admit that Starline and Surge were his family. That was shocking. It's sad to think about how much Starline screwed up. He could have easily just been training them to fight Eggman for good reasons. This makes me think of a parallel universe where that was the case. Tails has the common sense to say that they could give him some more time. But no! It really makes me wish Tails was in charge. Isn't it obvious that he might get really mad because he'd blamed Sonic for what happened to her because he lost it with Tails just for mentioning Sonic's name? Although Tails didn't get a chance to mention that to Sonic, so Sonic wouldn't be aware of how bad his temper could be. He thinks he'll just get sad and that's it, not go berserk on him and ruin his chance at living somewhere nice. How does he think he'll be calm and not furious with him for basically telling him that he got Surge killed? Isn't it obvious that it's smarter to just make sure Kit will keep being polite to him until at least they find the body? Kit says he wasn't sure where to put the box and apologizes. Sonic at least tries to look sympathetic to him for what it's worth, kneeling to the floor and looking sad and breaking the news to him calmly. He says that the ground was unsteady and she fell and was buried. He also says he tried to help, and says that Starline probably is gone too. His text bubble looks blurrier as he looks sad, and Sonic apologizes and says he did what he could. But surprisingly, Kid just suppresses how he feels about it instead of blowing up at him. Or, saying that Surge heals really fast, and he repeatedly got told that information, so you'd think he would take in that information. But I guess he didn't take in any information, since he's not acting incredibly grateful towards Tails for saving his life either. Sonic did have every reason to think that Surge wouldn't have survived that fall, other than the fact that he survived unsurvivable things himself. So obviously there's always the chance she could have had rings, and he shouldn't have risked telling him she died when it could be made to look like a liar anyways. If he knew about how well she could heal, maybe he wouldn't have said this to him. Kid could have told him she heals really fast on the way there as basic conversation. I have to assume that the reason Kid didn't tell him Surge could heal so well is that he still has some loyalty to her and thinks it'd be betraying her to give Sonic any intel on her. A more cruel person could take advantage of her being able to heal really fast by using more lethal force on her, making her fights with him more painful. So Surge would get mad at him for telling Sonic how she can heal fast. Still, I'm really not looking forward to potential plot points where he'd end up hating Sonic because he told him she died when he had every reason to think that was true, which Kid would know. Some people run away in a panic in a city, as Surge is just being evil to people who did nothing to her. And she can float cars with her device now. Then she at least says she likes Whisper's style, but I don't know why. Maybe she just likes her fashion sense. She also cares enough to ask her for a name. I like that we know what her wisps are saying. Whisper says Surge isn't worth talking to. At least someone has that common sense. Her wisp attacks give Surge trouble, and then out of nowhere, she reveals that she can run out of charge. First Kit can run out of water, and now this. That was weird because Kit clearly has more water than would actually fit in his pack. I thought she had an infinite amount of energy because she's magical. Blaze never runs out of fire power. I suppose it can make sense because even the witches in Sabrina can run out of magic. But it still doesn't make sense because none of the Sonic characters are able to run out of magic. Surge explains that her gizmo is draining her too fast. Then she runs into some pink energy and says it worked, so she got more energy from that, and she grabs her in one of her wisps. It's a nice surprise that she's fighting Whisper all of a sudden this time instead of instantly going to fight Sonic again. I guess she doesn't know that Sonic practically lives in Tails' house, so she thinks he's not guaranteed to be there. Except Starline would know a lot about Sonic, because he knows a lot about Eggman, so he would have told her that Sonic practically lives at Tails' house. So I don't know why she's gonna lure Sonic to her to have a fight in the city. Anyone would expect her to just go to Tails' house. This issue just doesn't flow naturally at all. She absorbs the wisp, and Whisper smacks her with a blue wisp, and Surge smacks her to the floor. Then Tails gets told that there's trouble in Central City, and some volunteers with Tangle are trying to deal with the damage from the Badnik attack last night. They get wished good luck, and Tails wishes they didn't have to do this because he feels bad for Kent. Belle says she'll stay with him. It'd be common sense of one of them to tell Kid as soon as possible that they plan on reuniting him with his family. Or orphanage, whatever, to give him some hope, instead of just saddling him with a bombshell. He's just too nice and brainwashed to just be thankful that he won't have to be abused by Surge anymore. It's annoying. He could have easily not reacted like this because he knows she can heal really fast. Eventually, I'm not bored anymore when Sonic and Tails see Surge, who makes the obviously dumbass decision to try to beat up a hallucination of Starline when she wouldn't feel the impact with him, and she's in the middle of a fight with someone else. Then I wonder why Surge is letting Sonic talk so much with his boring dialogue. Why can't most of the characters' decisions be understandable instead of idiotic? That shouldn't be too much to ask. Tails helps Whisper walk away and tells her to lay low, and plans on getting her back to the lab. Then Belle gets told by a news report that there's overturned cars and hurt civilians. Belle could have easily turned off the news report, because it'd be too depressing, and she wouldn't want to see a report on Sonic being in danger while she's unable to help him. She could have easily just switched to cartoons to give Kit something else to watch, but that'd be the plot flowing naturally. Nothing is going as you'd expect. So Kit sees it and plans on leaving the house. I saw that coming, because that'd be more drama. He says he wants to help, and she closes the door and tells him to look after himself. I know she says this because he's in mourning and she assumes he'll put up with it, and she thinks his mourning would cloud his judgment and make him self-destructive. But his powers would be useful in the fight. She could have easily let him leave, not treat him like a helpless kid. He looks creepy with his eyes and says that Sonic can use him too and he can't lose him. Too bad he'll see Surge again. It'd be a shame if he always stayed a villain. I know he looks like just a villain here, but the artist didn't have to decide to draw him with black and red eyes. So he's willing to do whatever it takes to escape the house, including breaking a chain and getting her hurt from falling and having something land on her. I guess he's hoping, despite his fear of Sonic, that he won't get mad at him for this if he means he gets help from him in the fight. Why would he ever think he wouldn't get mad at him? She says he already matters, kind of out of nowhere. And at least he's written to stop before running away. So he proves that hearing that meant something to him, since his eyes returned to normal. But again, it's not written naturally because he doesn't even apologize to her. It'd be a predictable tragic drama thing to write to have the heroes hate him because he got Belle hurt, even though she's so repairable and he had good intentions in leaving. Well, Kid deserves to be scolded for this. I would hope they'd say they forgive him and act like they don't hold it against them in front of him, because he needs their influence and support to become a hero. Seeing them be polite to him long enough is needed to convince him that they're the ones he should side with. I'm just dreading the idea that he'd go back to working for Surge because he's gonna see her again. You'd think he'd learn that he'd be much happier being with Sonic because Sonic's nice and doesn't pressure him into doing stuff he'd feel guilty about. Because people take in the information they're given. He may have been brainwashed into working for Surge, but I still want him to get to the point where he can't stand Surge anymore. Which could be because she'd make the dumb decision of trying to fight someone who's not there and electrocute him. Him getting electrocuted by her would be inevitable if he's close to her. I hope he finally gets a clue at some point instead of always being with her because of the meta logic that he's her sidekick. This issue is by Evan Stanley, and had a plot that went nothing like I expected, including the Whisper and Surge fight out of nowhere, which was just flashes of light from wisps being aimed at her. And most of the time she missed, so it just bored me to look at, when obviously the audience would rather see her get slapstick. Combine that with her being able to heal instantly, and I don't care what's being done against her in the fight. And then there's the confusing revelation that Surge is hallucinating Starline and keeps trying to attack him just because of the advice on her, which Kit wouldn't want to put up with, as she'd be very dangerous to him that way. This could have easily not happened. It'd be worth the confusion if it backfires on Surge. Of course, Surge made the unbelievable decision not to kill Eggman, or even so much as injure him, for no reason before this. So it's only because she moved on to terrorize the city for no reason that I still take her seriously. Oh, I just have to assume that she's only attacking the city to lure Sonic to her. But she knows where Tails' house is. And Starline would have told her that he hangs out there a lot. So everyone would expect her to just go straight there then. We get to see Kit at Tails' house, but there's not very much of it actually. There's no focus on him being grateful that Tails saved his life earlier. Tails is shockingly dumb enough that he doesn't know what he's gonna do with Kit just to have drama, instead of them telling Kit how he could see his family again. And Sonic is dumb enough to tell him what happened to Surge without finding her body first, even though he was smart enough not to before. So I never expected that. And Belle wants to stop someone with powerful water abilities who beat Metal Sonic from helping Sonic in a fight, even after he talked to her calmly, so she would understand his motivations. So as usual, I was shocked by the stupidity of the characters and disappointed in how the story turned out because of it, as it racked up the idiot balls to have more drama than necessary, and most of it didn't turn out the way anyone would expect it to. Ultimately, the issue just left a bad impression on me by having a needlessly dark ending I wish I didn't have to see, when it could have easily just stopped at pushing or pulling Belle out of the way of the door with water, and then flew away. He may not know her very well, but it was still out of character for him to go to the extremes of crushing her when he can fly much faster than she can run.